What is
the
good,
process
Ev? Well,
from the
you see Coach out here on the phone as we go live. But man, we are live here on the Blue Bloods Coaches Corner edition. As always, man, Coach is actually on the phone. I think lining up a guest for us in the coming days, man. So stay tuned for that. But man, we just wanted to come live. A big hit last over the past 2 years on this channel has been mailbags. And I want you guys to dictate the show, whether it's submitting questions beforehand that we're going to throw up on the thumbnail and have planned to talk about, or whether it's commenting on YouTube, on social media, or wherever you're watching the show right now. Comment your questions, what you guys want to talk about, and me and Coach are going to answer all y'all's questions live right here on the Blue Bloods Coaches Corner edition here on Friday, man. We just wanted to get live and talk about some big topics, man. There was a lot to talk about. We had a really, really good show earlier this week about the NFL draft, talking about some changes that need to be made. I hopped on HBCU Nightly last night. We had a whole lot to talk about in regards to that. Some of the stuff I want to throw to Coach as well, man. But Coach, how you feeling, man?
feeling good, man. That call was kind of what you were just talking about, lining somebody up to get on with us and talk about the draft, the show that we just had. They tuned in and wanted to come talk and give their input. So that was the call that happened in between the intro and us going live. But other than that, man, everything's good. How about yourself, baby?
Man, chilling. Shifting into, I guess, preview mode, man. Now the transfer portal's closed, so players aren't leaving anymore. So I can kind of, start
Let's your
looking at
grab.
yeah, it's like start looking at rosters, getting my predictions together, stuff like that. I didn't want to start anything. People were asking, man, a lot of people, and listen, I did it with Josh, love my guy, man, but it was way too early for me to be putting my neck out there. Predicting who's going to win the SWAC West and all this kind of stuff, man. There's
That's
so
easy.
much, yeah, so many changes. Or East. Let me go with East. East is a lot harder. West is a little bit easier. I agree with you on that one. But man, we got some really, really good topics that were submitted. Now, if you're watching, don't hesitate, man. Throw in a topic, and we're gonna hit as many topics as we can tonight. Anything about college football, FBS, FCS, anything, man. Just throw it at us, and we're gonna address it here on the show. And if we don't get to your question tonight, and it's a really, really good question, we're gonna make it a main topic on the show next week. We're gonna try to do 2 to 3 mailbags per week. Man, we're going to be pushing out more content than anyone out in this space this offseason, man. Between coaching corners, between interviews with players, between the lounge, between these mailbags, man, we are going to be on your TV screens, on your phones and your headphones all off season, man. And I got a big announcement coming. I don't know when I can announce it. Hopefully next week. But I got a big announcement for a new show that I'm going to be doing with another big FCS person in this space. This season that you guys are going to really be looking forward to. But Coach, let's start here, man. We had a lot of good questions, and I want to start with I think the easiest topic to hit out of all the ones we got. South Dakota State has been the talk of the FCS over the past few years. They were I guess they had to live in the shadow of the North Dakota State dynasty. They were always 1 or 2 games away from winning it all. And they should have won that Sam Houston game in the spring and just came up short in the last seconds of that game. But they had opportunities to win it. In your opinion, looking at this team, how likely is it that South Dakota State three-peats?
I think you got to put it in the 90% range, the high 90s, because the quarterback comes back. So that guy is the bread and butter, the oil, the water, however you want to put it to that program. So I think by him coming back alone, puts them in the 90% range, high 95% or a little above that to repeat. I know people say, well, they lost the running back, but the kid they have behind him is just as explosive, if not more so. Maybe not as big or as much as a bruiser, but he can actually take it 80. He don't need a whole lot of room, and he can get that way. I will say the only thing that keeps me from just jumping completely out there on the ledge, you gotta think that North Dakota's just not sitting back and taking what happened last year. You got to think that they've got that plastered everywhere in that building, and Montana State, they're going to have something to say about it. But until it's on the field, I think you got to go with them. And I'd be in the 90s, high 90s, saying that they have the road to repeat, just because they're going to win a lot of games this year, Blue, by just rolling their helmet out there. Trust me.
I like it. No, I'm not disagreeing with you on that point. 90% though going into the season to three-peat, because Coach, I mean,
the quarterback comes back.
Oh, I'm with you. I'm with you with that. But like,
everybody's fully healthy.
I got you. No, let me ask you this though, because you guys have won multiple just conference championships in the SWAC before with you and the coaching staff. This team's won back-to-back national titles. Now you win one, the target's on your back. I don't think people understand how big the target gets when you win 2 in a row and you come into the season on a 29-game winning streak. I don't.
But that goes both ways, though. But it goes both ways, though, because now your kids lock in, they buy into it. They've already bought into it, but now they really buy into it. They double down on not letting this thing happen, not getting caught on a night where someone that's not supposed to beat them comes out and beats them. Their kids are all in now. So, that thing works both ways. Ain't no doubt. They already know it's already in the building. You're going to be everybody's Super Bowl. They get that. Now they've got to match that. And I know they lost quite a bit up front, but they were at least 2 deep at every position up front. And I think that alone, and not a heavy coaching overhaul, I think that alone kind of puts them, again, why I say in that percentile. Who do you got?
No, I would pick South Dakota State if I had to pick right now. It's just 90% is like, I mean, that's damn near just saying like, bro, like y'all don't even need to go out there. Like, right? Let's just go ahead and give it. And I agree with you. I think the ultimate contender, in my opinion, this year is North Dakota State. I really do think has the opportunity to make another run. Now, the question I have with them is you get a new head coach in there, new staff, but you return a lot of talent across not just the line of scrimmages, but in the secondary. But the biggest question for them is wide receiver play. They're going to have a lot of new faces. They have to develop. They lose Zach Mathis. They lose Eli Green to the transfer portal late. Do they have enough talent on the outsides? Because I do think they're going to be able to run the football. Listen, I don't care who they lose. North Dakota State's going to average 200 to 250 yards per game on the ground every year, and there's nothing you can do about it because they're going to be bigger and more physical than 98% of the teams that they play, maybe outside of South Dakota State. And I still think that might be the only team. Coach, there's an argument right now that they're bigger and more physical than Colorado in the line of scrimmage right now. And so I think North Dakota State's going to be there. Now, I will say the dark horse, and I feel weird calling them a dark horse, Coach, as we just saw them play in Frisco. Montana is a team that could be scary if they get the signal caller position figured out.
That's the only thing.
That's the biggest question. Now, the kid that they have supposedly coming in to start was a true freshman last year. He's the son of probably one of the best quarterbacks of all time in Montana history. In the late 90s, who threw for a whole lot of yards. And there were a lot of people who kind of wanted him to start over Clifton. And I don't think he's a playmaker per se, Coach, with his legs like a Clifton McDowell, but he definitely has more. He definitely has the ability to push the football down the field a lot more. I think he's a lot more accurate, comfortable in the pocket, things like that. So there's a chance that they could have a better quarterback this year in that system. And then, Coach, you know who I'm going with real quick. Junior Bergen's still there.
He's that guy. But I got to believe that nobody will dare kick the ball to him this year. So he may get froze out. I mean, I got to believe that right now off rip that nobody's going to kick the ball to him.
I would hope not. But then you got the Jerry Rice Award winner coming back, and Eli Gilman at running back. Your offensive line is going to have some new pieces, but I like the way just on paper that looks like it's going to be a strong unit. You've returned a good bit on the edge of your defense, good bit in the secondary, but the problem is, can you replace that guy who played that 3, that nose, and Alex Gubner? Who do you have coming in at defensive tackle to replace him? That's a question mark for me. I think Montana State's in the conversation. Like Timothy's predicting in the chat, he said the Cats are going to bounce back and beat the Grizz. The one thing
They were so close. They were so close. They were so close. They should have. I would have lost a month's salary on them last year.
against
I
North
would have
Dakota
lost a month's
State.
salary. Oh, I'd have lost a month's salary easily, easily.
Here's where I stand on Montana State. And Coach, we've seen teams like this, and you're going to understand where I'm going with this as I describe it. We've seen plenty of teams on paper look like a championship team. They have the talent,
Right.
no doubt. On paper, they have the talent, and also too, it's going to be super hard to go into Bobcat Stadium and win a game on the road. They got that for them. The question I've had for them for 2-3 years now, Coach, are they going to be able to throw the football? Are they going to be good enough running the football where they're not going to have to throw like a coach? And I don't care how good you are running the football. I mean, Coach, they averaged
We know.
300 yards per game for like 2 years in a row now. And came away with nothing from it. They got a big sky title. Let me rephrase that. They got a conference title, but they haven't won the big one. And you're looking at Montana State as, can they get it done if that they can't throw the football down the field? Like eventually someone's going to take the run away. Eventually
True.
someone is, whether it's South Dakota State, whether it's North Dakota State, whether it's Montana. If you can't throw the football, man, like
You're in
it
trouble.
just limits. Coach, you
Yeah.
know this as an offensive guy, as a play caller. If you don't trust your quarterback to throw the football, and you don't trust you have the playmakers on the outside, it really makes the play caller nervous in key situations because you don't know how, like, for you, if you're in that situation. Now we know Tommy can run, but here's the other thing with the Bobcats, they lose that kind of crutch that Tommy Millott had because Sean Chambers is gone now. So they ain't going to be rotating quarterbacks. Can Tommy Millott get it done by himself now?
And I hear that, and we all know. I mean, if you know football, we all know that there's going to come a time when somebody's going to put 15 people up on the line of scrimmage and say, "No, you're not going to run it." Can they do it enough? And that's a couple teams that we have that question for. But I think for them, if I was them, that's all we would have done all spring. We wouldn't have thought about the run. We'd have threw the ball all spring. That's what we would have done, just to make sure that we go into summer feeling comfortable that we can complete passes down the field. Because I think at the end of the day, that's kind of what stopped them from having the opportunity to win a championship this past year. You know, Malott, I see him much like uh, the signal caller at Dakota State as the catalyst, the main staple. They all go when he goes. Can he stay healthy? That's going to be the question. How much do they use him knowing that they don't have that crutch? I think will be a big deal as well. And I want to put money on him, but it's kind of like you were saying last year with yeah. So we won't make you relive that, but I
I
just
tried. I tried. I tried my best. I really did last year. I was trying to sell it.
hey, you and me both. But I was trying to sell the guys up there with the potatoes. But I just think that Tommy gives them an outside, what they call it, a puncher's chance,
Yeah.
just because. But again, if they can't throw it, I don't want to say consistently, but if they can't throw it enough, they'll have the same results. Because you'll beat all the bad teams, but the good teams are the ones that you need to beat, and those are the ones you're going to need to throw the ball against.
Yeah. But so I think it's safe to say, man, shout out to this question. It was a good talking point. We both give South Dakota State a very good shot to repeat. And 3 straight titles. man, Jimmy Rogers is going to be the hottest name on the coaching market ever,
Gonna be
man. I mean,
tough.
2 straight national titles to start your career is insane. I
Gonna be
mean,
tough to hold it.
yeah.
Ain't no
Plus,
doubt.
he's one of the best defensive minds in the country too. Coach, let's shift gears into our second topic. Hot seat talk's always fun, man, especially when it's May. Apparently,
What's up to everybody in the chat, man? I tried to
yeah,
get on and then I don't know what happened, so I stopped because I didn't want to disappear. But what's up to everybody in the chat, man? Thank y'all for joining us.
that's a fact, man.
Like,
Appreciate y'all.
subscribe.
Yes, definitely hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. We're on the goal for us, man, to get to 10K this season. Just hit 7K, or yeah, just hit 7K recently, man. So shout out to y'all, man. We're on the road to 8K now. So appreciate y'all for tuning in. Coach, hot seat talk. Here we are, man. But this question specifically focused on FCS HBCU coaches, including the independents. It was, the question was just how many HBCU coaches are on the hot seat entering the season, and I think we can go ahead and just knock this one out. There's an obvious one in Huntsville right now, and it's Connell Maynor.
Yeah, that's past hot. That's that the flames are already up on that one. The flames are
Yeah,
already up on that one.
I mean, I don't know. I don't. I really think to save his job, they're going to have to finish top 3 in the East, and they're going to have to win the Magic City Classic.
Oh, ain't no doubt.
That's got
Ain't
to
no
be
doubt.
like, that's got to be the bare minimum, I want to say, because I look at that roster, Coach. I don't see a championship roster, but at the same time, they shouldn't be where they are in terms of like preseason projections right now. Like, it just seems since Akil Glass has left, it's just been this like steady decline in the potential of that team. And coach, you know this. If you hire a defensive head coach and the defense sucks, it's not a great look for that head coach. If you hire an offensive head coach, which Connell Maynard came in as one of the hottest names on the circuit as an offensive coach, your offense can't suck. And the offense has not been good outside of Akil Glass. And then even with like, I won't say generational talent, but let's just say Akil Glass is in the conversation for one of the best careers a SWAC quarterback's had in recent memory. You still technically had some lags with him. That Grambling game in my mind sticks out where I think they threw like 4 or 5 interceptions or something like that. It was like the week or two before they lost to Jackson, like 60-7 at homecoming. You didn't give him an offensive line. And then at the end of the day, you never reached the pinnacle of what you should have done with a talent like Akil Glass in the SWAC. And so I just think Maynard, his lack of ability to develop quarterbacks, back-to-back losing seasons now, and potentially 3 straight losses in the Magic City Classic, man, that's just a recipe for we're going in a different direction, especially coach, because his contract ends this year.
Oh, it's tough. And that being, how do I put that? How do I put this nicely? Without the renewal going into this season, I think is all you need to know. Because if it was a situation of where we're all in, I think a renewal would have been done by now. Just kind of go back on what you're saying. They have an early D2 game, and if they struggle in that D2 game, it could be trouble. I don't think a middle of the pack loss in the Magic City. I don't think that bodes well. Um, you hit on so much that I want to talk about because, like, at the end of the day, when you are, and it's the thing that I've never really understood, when you are beating people 40 to nothing, and you have that glass back there playing quarterback, you need to start putting in that guy behind glass for instances like this because he put up a lot of points versus people sometimes. I mean, a lot of times, and he went from wire to wire. And now that he's gone, the guy that was behind him never got any real game reps. So yeah, he put up crazy stats, but you weren't preparing for the future while you were in the moment, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what they've been dealing with the last couple of years. Like you said, other than the spring season, it's not like they were, and I don't want this to come off as a shot. It's not like they were just winning titles, if that makes sense.
Yep.
But you were in shootouts, you were in games. It came down to the last play for us to beat them in 19 to win the division, to go to the championship game. So you had those type of games, but since then it's been on a steady, steep decline. And I think the first five, if it's a 1-4 start, a bad 1-4 start, I think that one could get really, really hot, really, 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 really hot quick.
If they start out 1-4, well, no, because they at least win 2 games in the first 3. Because they even switched out a D2 game with like an NAIA game. They switched out the Kentucky State game for like an even worse game on the schedule, which that's a whole nother conversation about scheduling among some of these schools. But
As we've talked about before.
I think another coach that we're going to have to start having an honest conversation with, and everyone keeps giving him the benefit of the doubt because his contract, Dawson Odoms. I mean, what at this point, what are we like? What are you paying him for? What are the expectations at Norfolk if it's another losing season? I mean, listen, I don't want to rehash because we've done it on the show about why he left Southern for this job, but it's either win now or you got to make a move. You cannot be paying a coach that much money to be as average as Norfolk has been, especially.
And they've had some bad losses.
Yes, they lost to a D2 team last year, and coach, it wasn't even like a normal loss to a D2 team. Like they got handled by a D2 team last year.
Yeah, some bad losses, but I feel the same about, and I know you're going to be like, what? But I feel the same about Coach George as you do about Dawson, because they're paying him a lot of money. And how long do you want to continue to finish fourth? That's a lot of money to finish fourth. That's a lot of money to not sniff the championship. That's a lot of money to get me really, really excited. And 4 games left in the year, we completely fall on our face. That's a lot of money for that. And same thing you're saying with Coach Odoms, I'm saying with Coach George. You have some of the best situations in all of HBCU football. Now we got to start turning the corner, because now we're losing to D2s. We're struggling to get out versus bad teams, and our payroll, our budgets are 2 times more than these people that are beating us. What are we paying for? So, I think we both have it right here with those two. And I think we're both saying the same thing about both programs.
Yeah, it's tough with now I will say Norfolk, the reason I'm putting them on there is they've won 2 games and 3 games the past 2 years.
Oh, that's tough. I know that about it.
11 and
In the
23.
MEAC.
Yeah, 11 and 23, coach. 5 and 10 in conference over your first 3 years is brutal. I mean,
and when I say in the MEAC, I don't mean that as a shot to the MEAC, but I'm just saying.
You can say it.
I don't want to say that as a shot. I don't want them coming for me. I'm not saying that as a shot to the MEAC, but I'm just saying it's not like you're in the toughest conference from top to bottom.
Mm-hmm.
You know the top 2. You should be fighting for that number 2, number 3, in that 1 spot. And that 1 spot should be coming right now, being the time that you've been there. So it's not like you're just this loaded top to bottom conference with 2 sides and all that. It's only so many of you guys that play football, and you should not be in the bottom half.
No, and Delaware State should almost be a guaranteed win at this point.
That should be so. But yeah, that should be circle. That should be circle.
I mean, my thing with Eddie is, I don't know, because I was only including coaches who I thought could be fired this offseason. Now, if we're talking about people who could make their seat hot this year, I'm throwing Eddie on. Like Eddie's got to be a part of this conversation. As much as as much as I've tried to hype Tennessee State and hype what Eddie's doing and hype what my guy Brandon's doing over there as a D coordinator. If they don't compete this year, it's like I've already said, it's kind of like, when are you competing? And now, I thought coming into the season, you return a quarterback, return an All-American running back, return some wide receivers, offensive line looks good. Now you're starting to lose defensive players. You lost Bryce Phillips to I want to say a P5 school, P4 school, whatever it might be, or at least FBS school. Terrell Allen's in the portal now. Monroe Beard's in the portal now. You lose the Green twins to graduation. You lose Jeremiah Josephs to the portal. It's just like, man, you keep losing all this talent, and eventually now the outlook isn't as positive. So I don't think it's going to be easy to win the Big South OVC this year, but I do think they have the talent to still compete. But I'm with you. If you're not in the conversation in late November for that conference title, I think we're going to have to start turning the heat up a little bit. And I think that's kind of how I feel. No, I'm not going to say he's on the hot seat. Let me rephrase this before I say it, and then we're going to move on. If Alabama State doesn't get it done this year, we're going to have to start having a conversation about E-Rob.
Definitely. And I think that's brought on solely with the hype trains. I call it the hype train, from early February all the way to now. You can't keep telling people that you are the eventual champs. It's your turn. It's your turn. It's your turn. And flop. You can't do that. And then you return a lot of guys, even though you lost a lot of guys. You return a lot. You have the best facilities in all of FCS. So the reasons not to happen for it to happen, you don't have a whole lot of those. And with Coach Simmons moving on, everybody says this is definitely your time. With the situation going on at Jackson, this is definitely your time. So you can't afford to come in there and finish second or third in the East without that conversation starting. And I know this is his first year. I know this is his first couple months. But I also feel that, because it's been shown, I also feel that Coach Colsey can't come out there and go from top to bottom. That's going to be a real conversation.
With as many second-year head coaches that has been fired recently, all those first-year coaches should be nervous if it doesn't get off on the right foot, especially if you're working at Southern or FAM.
Because I've been monitoring that situation. There's been a revolving door of out and in with kids. I know, talent's still there. I get that. But you just went from a natty. You cannot go to fourth or fifth in that. You can't do that. With bad losses, you can't do that. Without that heating up, because I think that turns into a Eric Dooley situation from last year very, very quickly.
Agreed. Absolutely agree. I mean, because I don't even know if it's an Eric Dooley situation. Because let's remember, still, Eric Dooley still found a way to get to the SWAC championship and still lost his job, coach. And
for a
still
lot of
lost
money.
his job. So, and then also too, we know how contentious that hiring was on multiple fronts.
Right. That's why I say that.
Yeah, the side that did not want Colsey to step into the role. Oh, if you don't think it's going to be loud in Tallahassee, if they lose to South Carolina State week 1, or lose a game they're not supposed to, or God forbid lose to Bethune in the Florida Classic. I mean, I'm sorry. Like, I know that he might not be, let go or nothing, but if you don't think he's going into 2025 with some pressure,
oh, ain't no doubt.
that's a whole nother conversation. Now, while we're still on coaches, we got another topic that was submitted before the show. But shout out to Diana, man, always supporting the channel and everything. She wanted to know, before we move on, Coach, from the MEAC, do you think South Carolina State can make a run at a conference title in year one of Chinnis Berry? New quarterback, Eric Phoenix comes back, who was Chinnis's quarterback at Benedict, spent one season at Murray State. Coach, I'll tell you this, they probably got the best offensive line in HBCU football right now.
I'm hearing you.
Do you think there's now, instead of saying, like, let's put a percentage on it. We did it for South Dakota State, gave them 90+% to three-peat the national title. What's the percentage chance you give South Carolina State to compete for a MEAC title? Now, remember, I do think we gotta skew it a little bit because there's only 6 teams, and we know 2 of them aren't competing anywhere.
Right.
Delaware State and Norfolk have no shot, in my opinion. So it's really, can they make a run with those top other 3 teams?
Right. And I think he has a puncher's chance just because of what he does offensively, bringing his staff, what they did, defensively with Benedict. Even though it steps up a level, he's been at this level before, so to speak, even though it was in a different conference, the FCS Division I level. And, we've said it before, if you've got a seasoned trigger man, you've got a chance. And, he's got a chance because NCCU brings in a new guy. We know what Hampton has. So, I'd be surprised if he wasn't in the fight. I'd be surprised if they wasn't in the fight.
Let me pull up real quick, Coach. Let's do this the proper way. Let me pull up their schedule real quick. So their out of conference games, I think some of them are winnable. Now, let me just run through them real quick. Open up the season on the road against FAMU. That's going to be a tough road game. In Bragg, longest home winning streak in the country. That's going to be a very interesting game. But South Carolina State is the last team to beat FAM in Bragg before the winning streak started back in 2018 when both were in the MEAC. Then they go to the Citadel. Then they got their FBS game against Georgia Southern, who I don't think is as difficult an FBS game as a lot of teams have, because Georgia Southern is not a very good Group of 5 team. But I still don't know. I don't think they'll win that game. But that's still not a game against, Alabama or Georgia or someone like that. Then, Coach, they got North Carolina A&T at home. We know what A&T was last year, to say the least.
Which means that's winnable.
That should be a win, especially at home right now. Then they go to Tennessee Tech, who's an average team to say the least. They also, if I'm not mistaken, have a first-year head coach coming in as well at Tennessee Tech. They get Fort Valley, a good D2 team. Let's put it in perspective. It has a very good D2 team, but you should not lose D2 games, in my opinion. Then they get Delaware State at home for homecoming, Coach. They get Central at home, which is super important because Central, Coach, we talked about I know you don't want to address it on here. We've talked about Alcorn struggles in the whole. Going to Orangeburg is like that for Central. That's a house of horrors for Central. Going to Orangeburg. But then, Coach, they get Howard and Morgan on the road in back-to-back weeks there. And they finish off the season senior day at home against Norfolk State. I think I really do. Having Morgan and Howard both on the road is tough, Coach. And then also having FAM on the road is going to be a really tough game. I think they have a chance to win man, if they're going to compete for the MEAC, you have to get Central at home.
Yeah, and Howard lost a lot. I think I might have said Hampton, but Howard lost a lot. They lost a lot up front. Even though that's later in the season, I still think they have a chance with that one, even though it's on the road. And it just kind of depends. There's a couple swing games in there. If they get NCCU, I think they could, they could really make some noise. They can't slip up with the ones that we say are wins. They can't drop those.
Can't lose to A&T. You
You
can't lose a
cannot.
D2 game. You should beat Tennessee, Tennessee Tech,
Check. Yeah,
but that's still an out of conference game. Like you still need to win that one for your overall record for momentum, and you have to beat Delaware State and Norfolk State. Got to win those
got
two
to,
games for sure.
got to, got to. So I think he has a very good puncher's chance of finishing in that top three and making it interesting going into the last couple weeks of the season. Just because of what he does. And if he's doing the same thing, he's bringing a kid that has an understanding of what he wants offensively, shouldn't be an issue. I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you here. Now the question was worded, do I think they can make a run? I wouldn't be surprised if they made a run. Like they're a talented team. They've kind of figured out that quarterback situation. They're talented at running back, a really good offensive line. Now defensively, I think the staff that Chin has brought in has a good philosophy. But coach, you know how it is year one. Do you have the talent in the building to run the scheme
To
that
make it
you
happen.
ran, that you
Yep.
built at Benedict? Um, I'll say this. I'm going to put it somewhere around 25-30%, about as high as I can go on that. I think that's pretty respectable for a first year head coach, and putting some respect on this team, because I do like them having Central at home, but I find it hard to give them the highest odds to win the conference. I think somewhere in that 25-30%. They're probably behind Central, in my opinion, right now. Probably a little bit behind Morgan. Howard, I think I would put Howard and them on the same plane right now. And the only reason I say that, and it might sound crazy to some MEAC people, Howard lost a lot. Quarterback, they lost some offensive linemen, they lost some edge rushers. Defensive tackle wasn't as strong last year.
Secondary
Secondary,
guy.
Kenny Gallup's going to be good. But I still think there's some question marks offensively that worries me a little bit with Howard. Now, their running back room's loaded, and if they can fix the tackle spots, then Howard's going to be really good again. It's just I would probably put South Carolina State just behind that Morgan Howard tier until I see Phoenix and those guys get into the system and see what that South Carolina State defense looks like. But I do think they're talented enough to make some waves. And I'll say this, Coach, and I said this on HBC Nightly, they're going to catch somebody they're not supposed to beat. Now, I don't know who. I think they're going to win one of those three games. That stretch between Central, Morgan, and Howard, I think South Carolina State shot somebody.
Yeah, if Morgan can't figure out how to score more than 12 points, they're going to have the same
Whole
issue.
nother topic. Whole nother
Yeah.
topic. That's just if. Let me ask you this. This is a perfect. Now, listen, this isn't a topic, and we said we are going to try to kick it at 30. Me and you never stick to any time on these shows. If Damon Wilson does not meet expectations for Morgan this year, do we have to start having a conversation?
Almost definitely, because it's been a couple years in a row where you could have really made shockwaves through the college football world, but you can't score more than 12 points. Uh, and either you don't want to face that or fix that, or just don't know how to face that or fix that. So if you continue to go out there and lose games 14-12, uh, 14-6, things like that, and holding teams under 200 yards, I think there's got to be some coming to the table about some of those issues. Definitely, definitely.
Agreed. Back-to-back 4-win seasons, coach. So 2 straight losing seasons. Now he had a big rebuild, so I don't think it's a fireable. I don't think he gets fired this year. I'm not putting him on the hot seat, but I'm just saying, going into 2025, it's kind of like, man, eventually you're gonna have to win. Like I get his resume from Bowie State, and what he's done defensively for this program. But if the offense continues to struggle,
Because you got
I
to play
mean,
offense. It's
that
offense, defense, special teams. It's all in one circle there.
yeah. I mean, but let's get to this last topic here, man. We'll double check the chat before we run. Now, we got asked about position U in FCS. So, in case you guys are a little confused on what we mean by position U, so at the FBS level, or the Power Four level at least, they always argue about who's DBU, like who puts out the best DBs, and it's always LSU, Florida, Bama, Ohio State. Who's QBU? Oklahoma's in that conversation. USC's in that conversation. And we were asked about FCS level college football position U. Now, I want to say this: we're not going to go through every position because we spontaneous show, and I like to do my research. So I really want to go back in history and kind of get a formula together on who's really positioned you. And I'm going to work with Timothy on that for the website, and we're going to have a whole show. We're going to bring Timothy on and really, really break down this. But Coach, just off the top of your head, and let's go modern time. We don't have to go back in history to the late 70s and 80s and remember everybody from the 90s. Just from like 2000 onward or even 2010 onward, is there a school, in your opinion, at the FCS level that has a claim to position you in any position?
I'm going to be biased with two.
Go ahead. That's fine.
And,
Bias is fine.
And like you said, because there was little to no research, so to speak, done in this. But I don't think you can dispute the fact that since 2014, that Alcorn State has had the quarterback running back situation for FCS. I think we've done pretty good with that. And I start with quarterbacks from John Gibbs to Lenore Sputman, Noah Johnson to Felix Harper. Running backs maybe a little bit more because now you're talking about DeLance Turner, played with the Ravens. You're talking about Deshaun Waller, who played in the USFL. You're talking about now Jarvion with Green Bay, and all these guys were back-to-back guys. So I got to go with us when you're talking about that. But when you're talking about FCS, if you're not talking about up front, OL, you got to be talking about those guys from the Dakota.
I mean, it's kind of hard not to. Now, I'm going to throw one at you, okay? I think, and this is kind of your position. I don't know if there's, especially if we're going to keep it in the 2000s, wide receivers gotta belong to Eastern Washington, right?
They've had three of the
Cooper
top.
Cup.
Yeah,
I mean, Cooper Cup, Kendrick Bourne. We met Efton Chisholm at the championship, who's also coming back, by the way, who's an All-American.
he's my hero too, by the way.
Yeah. Shout out to my guy, man. Efton's amazing. We're gonna have to get him on the show for sure before the season. You also had Webster, if I'm not mistaken, two come from there. I mean, man, it's like every year they just have like elite wide receivers, and they just had a receiver, if I'm not mistaken, transfer out to a Power 5 and sign a lucrative UDFA contract as well. I don't remember the kid's name, but they just always figure out wide receiver, man. And also too, it helps when you have arguably the greatest wide receiver of all time at this level come from your program as well. So let's not forget, but also too, with that Cooper team, I want to say so I'm looking here, and shout out to Craig Haley for this, Coach. In the last 10 years, the Eagles have had 7 different wide receivers to get over 150 receptions.
Oh, that's that's doing something. And you think about where they play at. You think about where they play at, and they're throwing the block like that.
And this kills me. Now, I think there's somebody who can challenge these two teams. You can make an argument for QBU with Eastern Washington and North Dakota State. Obviously, with North Dakota State, for the obvious reasons, you have freaking Carson Wentz, you have Trey Lance, you had was it Easton Stick before him, and you had Brock Jensen, who had the record for career wins until it was broken by Carson Wentz after him. And now you have Cam Miller, who's an All-American quarterback. And you also have 2 first-round picks since 2013. Like, that's insane to think about. And then with Eastern, you got Eric Berrier, Vernon Adams, and those guys.
Ooh.
So that's an argument. Now, let me throw one at you real quick. If Incarnate Word gets one more in here, with Cam Ward, with Lindsey Scott. If they can get another one in this conversation, I think we can put. I don't know if they'll take the QBU role, but they'll be in the conversation.
See, and it kind of goes back to how far, and I know we're wrapping up. And then Timothy's going to do a great job with the research and all that. But the whole DBU thing started from Alcorn State, the original
Yep.
DBU, because you talk about, and to me, that's going to take really a lot of research at our level to go through and figure out, just because of the numbers, and we want to stay relevant times. But when you talk about the Eastern Washington receiver train, uh, always tops in the league, always tops in their conference, and just FCS football. I think that's got to be big. And then I don't know how you put it to the O line, but the Dakotas, man, those guys up there in that green and gold. I mean, they put somebody in the league for 4 consecutive years, high draft picks.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
you know, so when you talk about that, and I think you have to me, I think that conversation has to be put to a timeline, because if you just leave it, it's too broad.
Yeah.
But I think you got to put it to a timeline. So whatever timeline we put it to, I'd be interested to see how
Hey,
those numbers fold out, man.
here's what I was thinking. I was thinking doing it by decade,
Mm.
10-year increments. Now we'll do a 12-year increment for the start because obviously, um,
Now, sending them
FCS.
to the pros, or are we saying
I
tops in
think
the conference?
I,
How are
I
we
think
doing it?
you got to tie everything in. Now, I'll say this: it can't just be draft picks because we've talked about this. We talked about this on the
Right.
last episode. You can have a
Yeah,
player.
that's why I want to make sure.
Yeah, you can have a player like Eric Barrier, who's not a good pro prospect, but bro, how are you not going to include him in this
Because his
conversation
numbers.
for? Yeah,
Yeah.
and you ask like Lindsey Scott, bro, that dude threw like 70 touchdowns one year and ran away with the Walter Payton. You got to have him in there. So I think it's a combination, and I'll say this: I think it's draft picks. I think it's all American teams. I think it's awards, Walter Payton winners, but Buchanan winners on defense. I think it's all conference. And then also I think it's consistency too. Where did you rank? So like if we're looking at offensive line, how have your units performed over the years? Is it just one or two guys that are, improving? So I think because I think South Dakota State's creeping in the conversation for O-line U, but you still got to
Yeah.
give it to North Dakota State because Billy Turner, Joe Hag, Cordell Volson, Dylan Runs, Cody Malk. Who was the kid this year who was at the Shrine Bowl and had a UDFA? I'm blanking on his name. But he's in the conversation. And then you can even go further back than that. And it's also, coach, they've been a top offensive line, a top running attack almost
Right.
every year they've been at the subdivision.
So you can't overlook that part.
Yeah. So I think that's what I'm looking for is the full package, because I'm looking here, and shout out to Craig Haley. He did this a while back. I think there's a few teams you could argue for some of these. And I think when I look at it too, because if you go back historically, that's where really and truly you're going to have a real debate, especially if you took everything into account, because like you said, like I'm happy that you've allowed me to come to games on the sideline, because I got to meet a lot of people during that Soul Bowl, and I got to meet one of the members of that DBU class who shut down Jerry Rice in the vet in that huge game back in '84. I don't think a lot of FCS fans know about that. And so if you take
Oh,
into account everything, it's going to be such a big debate. So I think doing it by generations, so I think decades would be perfect. Who was QBU of the 90s? Well, it's kind of hard. I know it's just one guy, but Alcorn's in the conversation because they had the
because of
greatest
what he
quarterback of
did.
all time. But also, I think Jackson, there's a conversation for defensive backs at Jackson, especially back in like the 80s and 90s. And I think wide receiver has
Jimmy
a lot of,
Smith.
yeah. I mean, think about those wide receivers at Jackson.
TC
Around,
Taylor.
I mean, they
Yeah.
had some monsters at wide receiver that were earning All-Americans, that were earning All-Conference, that were winning conference titles. Tennessee State has some defensive linemen, offensive linemen throughout their history that you can make a conversation about. And then also when you produce Dominic Rogers-Cromartie, you probably in the defensive back conversation for a decade. So I think it would be a really, really cool project to see running back. Now, Walter Payton came before the FCS, so you can include Walter Payton. Um,
Some will.
but I mean, think about the run that Southern had at running back.
Tillery, not Tillery. It's farther back from him.
Yeah, there was someone before because Tillery put up crazy numbers too. But
Yeah,
I
it was
mean,
somebody that passed it.
Even Grambling, Bruce Eugene, Devontae Kincaid,
Yeah,
Doug
yeah,
Williams.
yeah.
I mean, are you thinking about Steve Walford? Is that the name? I don't know. Someone put in the chat. I remember. But listen, man, we're gonna really break this down. But I think the ones that stick out to me, that was just what we wanted to do. Wide receiver, Eastern Washington would be my consensus. North Dakota State offensive line, and then I think quarterback is somewhere Eastern Washington, North Dakota State. But I did want to throw in there that I think Incarnate Word is trending. If they can get one more coach, they can find someone somewhere. Because I think last year everyone kind of thought it was like Zach Calzada. Really didn't turn out, but let's not forget they had a kid, true freshman, who won Freshman of the Week multiple times last year when they allowed him to start after Calzada's injury. So they could have someone coming up.
Who
Um,
got busy?
yes, that he did. And also we lost some really good ones too, because I think James Madison, especially defensively, would be in a lot of conversations for some
Oh, no
positions,
doubt.
especially defensive back. I think Northern Iowa's in a lot more conversations than people want to have, especially like defensive line and things like that. Weber State is in that conversation too. Rashid, Rashid Shareed at the Saints out of Weber. They've turned a lot of prospects out at defensive back. So it's going to be such an interesting conversation for that one. But like you said, historically, I think it would be a cool project because like you said, I don't think a lot of people understand how good some of those positional groups were back in like the 80s for some of these programs.
Oh, huge, huge. Pre pre portal and NIL life.
That's a whole nother thing, man. Like, and that's what I was. We'll have to talk about that on the next one. Is just like, will we ever see a Jerry Rice Award winner mature into a Walter Payton Award winner now?
Now they're coming to get him. But like you said, that's a whole nother show. Whole
Whole
nother
other show,
show.
man. Listen, man, we came on here for 30 minutes if we had almost an hour. So we appreciate you guys. Listen, if I missed your question in the chat, I got it starred. I'm going to write these down. We are not missing any questions. We got some good ones submitted during the show on Twitter. We also got some good
Okay.
ones submitted in the chat. So I'm going to write some of these down. We'll be back. We'll announce it. We'll either be back Sunday or Monday with another mailbag. And then Tuesday, we're going to have a special guest on. That announcement coming on the next mailbag episode, man. But make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, follow us on social media if you're watching on social X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it now. But guys, for Coach Fred, for myself, for the Blue Bloods FCS Football Central, man, we out for right now.